Well, now that that's dry, we'll look at the next stage. We're not quite ready to start painting the buildings yet. We're still sort of setting the scene and putting in a backdrop. And there's quite a few trees and bushes, some further away and some coming more towards the foreground and the middle distance. I'm going to paint all these trees wet in wet, so it's very important that I have all the colours ready. I'm going to start with some green. I'm going to take some Aureolin with just a touch of cobalt blue. I want a bit of lemon yellow, just slightly watered down, and then I want a rich dark green, and for that I'm going to use Viridian. Now that's a very strong green, like an emerald colour, but it's a good base for dark greens, and I'm going to add some ultramarine blue to it and then calm it down with some burnt sienna. And one other colour, raw sienna and burnt sienna, just to add a bit of warmth and variety into it. Right, now these colours are ready, let's have a look at the trees. Starting with this cool grey for the more distant ones. I'm just using the side of the brush to catch the paper so I get a sort of broken, uneven effect. We're ready now to start painting some of the stonework on the cottage walls. If you look at the stonework on this cottage, there's pinks, reds, browns, greys, a little bit of blue reflected from the sky, and in order to make it look varied and interesting, we need to get a few of these colours mixed, ready to use. I'm going to start with a bit of Naples yellow. This is a lovely creamy yellow colour, and I'm adding to that Naples yellow a little bit of cobalt violet to create a sort of warm pink colour. Now a nice stone colour made from raw sienna and burnt sienna, and if you remember that was the first colour again that we used in the sky, and this will give the picture some harmony because these colours are occurring again in the stonework. Now a touch of cobalt blue with a little bit of cobalt violet, and I'm going to put a little touch of burnt sienna into that to make it into a grey. Okay, so I'm going to start with that slight pinky colour and paint it over the stonework on all of the buildings. Where the windows are painted with white paint, I'm leaving a little white space to represent the window. I'm just going to soften that with a bit of clear water so it stays moist. Then I'm taking the raw sienna and burnt sienna and dropping that in. I want these colours to drift in with each other and merge on the paper. You get far more interesting results if you let these colours mix on the paper than if you try mixing too many of them together in the palette. A bit of that grey. It's quite nice at this stage to just let yourself free with your brush and just drop these colours in rather than looking at exactly where they are on your photograph. I mean, I don't think there's any problem in working from photographs, but it is a mistake to follow them too slavishly. A good idea to create a bit of texture on your paper can be to use a little bit of kitchen roll and dab it in one or two places to lift a bit of paint off. Now straight away, while this background's still damp, I'm going to start putting in these other greens and yellows to sort of get the impression of the weeds and foliage and the climbers growing up the walls. Taking advantage of the damp background, so I've got to work fairly quickly. I'm not trying to copy all the shapes of the plants in this painting at all. I'm just trying to get an approximation, a sort of impression of it, if you like, just to sort of get the basics in place. Now finally on this stage, I'm just going to put a thin wash over the whole of the path area. I'm going to wet the whole area first with clean water, trying to leave a little strip of white paper to look like the light's catching the path as it goes round the bend and out of the picture. Now adding that wash in. And then warm the wash slightly with some raw sienna and burnt sienna at the place nearest to the viewer, right in the foreground. It can help just to define these edges while the path's still wet, so they don't look too neat and tidy, almost as though they've been trimmed. Just by dropping it in to the edge there while the path is still wet. So that the path looks like it's reflecting a bit of colour from the sky, I'm just going to take a little bit of cobalt blue and cobalt violet and drop that in as well. Well, now that we've got all the basic background washes in place, both for the foliage and the cottage and the path, all of it really, we can now start to develop the building by sharpening it up with a bit of detail. But we'll start now by mixing a bit more stone colour and try to suggest a few shapes of stones in the wall. And I've got to be careful when I do this that I just pick out a few stones. It's easy to get into the trap, especially if you're enjoying it, sort of putting every stone in. Now a fairly strong dark brown with cobalt blue and burnt sienna. And we'll start to do a little bit of detailing around the tops of these chimneys. Make them stand out from the colours behind them. Now I'm going to take some ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to mix a nice rich dark brown. And let's look at this area where there's some really strong dark shadows under the eave. I don't want this line to be too neat and tidy. On an old thatched cottage like this, we don't want a really neat roof line. And then I'm going to mix some shadow colour. Very important when you're mixing shadow colour that you mix it from some of the same elements in the sky. So I'm going to take that cobalt blue and cobalt violet and get a quite deep shadow colour there underneath that eave, so it looks like the roof sticks out further than the wall of the building. And then with a brush of clear water, we can just soften that at that point. And this not only serves to represent the shadow area of that foliage, but the dark there helps to pick out the edge of the roof of that little porch. I'm going to look at putting some more shadows in now, looking at a definite light and dark side to the building so they look like solid three-dimensional objects. I'm going to make the shadow wash a little bit stronger now, so that as the shadows get nearer to the foreground, they become more intense, more noticeable. And then let's drop some lemon yellow in for a bit of this foliage, bringing it all down to the top of this gateway. Again, working quickly so that I can drop this into the slightly damp background. And there's quite a few heads of little flowers in this dark area here next to the window.